How lovely to see you again. It's been so long that you haven't been on the pink couch. We have to remedy that very soon, but we're doing the next best thing with your awesome superhero space. I love it. Listen, I want to ask you about your results. You've had a banner year. It's amazing, and I want to talk about that success. But before I do that, I have a burning question.
Sure.
And that is the last time we did an interview, I was pretty naive about G Adventures. And I mean, I'm going back a few decades now, so I'm allowed to have been a bit naive. You had said that the primary source markets are not Canada, right? So, and I thought being a Canadian company based in Toronto, Canada would have been a primary sales market for you, but it wasn't. You said you do much better elsewhere. And
Yeah.
it's my impression that over the last couple of years, that has shifted, that
It has.
Canada has become very important to your bottom line. I see the activity. I see, how much visibility you now have with travel advisors. So I want to know what changed.
I think when we first started, in the early 90s, if we can go back that far even, there was a greater opportunity because at that time, Canadians had 2 weeks holidays, right? Like there's this whole thing. And even though a majority don't get 2 weeks holiday anymore, it is still the law where people have,
Right.
where, so when I found out in early days that people in Europe got 4, 5, 6 weeks, Australians, people from New Zealand got more long service leaves and things like this that we've never even considered here in Canada. The opportunity was greater when you have obviously that's just a business calculation. When you have more holiday time, it's a bigger market for you. So yeah, so Canada was never that was never our largest market, even in since 1996 about. As a matter of fact, at one point it was our fifth biggest market.
Wow.
But I think what's
Yeah.
actually really shocking to me is the growth of Canada since COVID. It's been, as a matter of fact, right now, last year we grew 20% as a global business, but Canada grew 30%. So Canada's a shining star for us. But it's and we celebrate it here because it's also our most mature market, right? And so it's amazing what the small and mighty team we have in Canada here, what they're able to accomplish, and still grow this market. Because the other thing is we haven't invested in it, when you think of our global marketing spend over the years in terms of size of market and growth, but now we are because Canada's showing that we still have a lot, of a runway to grow, and which I think it surprised a lot of people in the last, I
Yeah.
would say, 2 years, that there's a renewed feeling that we can grow, and we're not saturated in this market. We can grow considerably in our most mature market. So that's super exciting for us.
Well, I think it's very exciting for the industry too, because I recall speaking twice. I was speaking to someone at a fairly large consortium, and they said that their G Adventure sales were, beating all records.
Yeah.
But the reason for that was a little bit different than what we're talking about, although there's overlap. And that was because they were selling Canada as a product. So you've moved
Yeah.
into that obviously big time with all of the elbows up, et cetera, shift in
Yeah.
demand. Talk to me about that.
Well, it's funny because and it's so great to do an interview in Canada because I spend so much time interviewing in other parts of the world because this is our home market.
Yeah.
We're so prideful of it. But first of all, let's be real. There's this shift towards supporting Canadian businesses, right? And there's no business more Canadian than we are. Founded and funded and complete 100% ownership here. And so that's one side of it that kind of is more recent. But I think on the other side of COVID, Canada became a much, better and more important destination. Traditionally, in our market, not in every market, but in what we do, Canada was often seen as a stopover for the States.
Right.
So you'd come to the US, but you'd take a smaller, shorter trip to kind of visit Canada on the way. But now it is definitely a destination. We're proving that it is a destination people are coming back multiple times too, like 2 or 3 times. And then it's even increased more with what's happening right now, which is the global, without getting too political, but this whole global tariff. The inbound US market is cratered for most people, not just Canadians, by the way, going like globally.
Yeah.
People don't even want to fly through the US right now. And so naturally, Canada has seen a real, explosion. Actually, I mean, I would say growth, but it's actually been explosive especially the last year. So while it was outpacing everything else, growing just before that, there's a point now where we're just adding and adding more programs, and there's people that are returning multiple times to Canada, which we haven't seen in a very ever actually in some cases. And for what we do, which is the active kind of adventure, kind of sustainable market.
Yeah, it's amazing. And your sales have reflected that. Your year end was record breaking. I think your July, was it July that was 40% above
Yeah,
last
July
year? I
we
mean,
hit 40%
that's
growth.
huge.
That's massive. And you know what? It's from a lot of hard work and a lot of a lot of hard work from a lot of people. It took us a very long time to scale, going from 0 to 100 after COVID, when you put your business in kind of hibernation for 2 years,
Yeah,
and then the market comes back with so quickly. The challenge was, there was this huge market share grab, but the challenge was who could scale the fastest, right? And we did the best we could, and I think we did an amazing job. But to see now, 3 years later, in 2025, that we're still managing to grow these kind of numbers, like 40% in July, has been, yeah, it's been remarkable. And we did a lot of planning on this, of course, coming out of COVID and even while in COVID, and seeing the fruits of a lot of people's labor come to
yeah.
fruition is quite it's rewarding and exciting.
Congratulations. I mean, that's no small feat, right? I mean, that's almost
No.
doubling, right?
Yeah, and and
It's
and and and, and, re- and
enormous.
really and really huge numbers, right? Like,
Yeah,
uh, people, it might be easier if you're in the resort business or the cruise business where you can add a ship or add. We take passengers like 12 at a time, so to so to move to grow that at that speed and that
right.
scale takes a lot of hard work and a lot of finesse, kind of remote management and business acumen for us to pull that off. And all from buying to product to marketing. It's just great how we're functioning right now.
And of course, to still maintain, the brand cachet, which is to be very human, very attentive to people's needs. You don't want to be perceived as mass market. So, of course, you've got to find that balance. But on that note, Bruce, I want to ask you, there's additional research that came out, I think, about a week ago from the Adventure Tourism Travel Trade Association, something like that effect, as a global adventure
ATTA, yeah.
association, talking about the $1 trillion, opportunity. And now even more so, they think they scanned about 15,000 consumers to see what was their primary interest in its adventure. So what has happened with the consumer market that they are now embracing this type of travel more than ever?
Well, I like to think that COVID was, I had this saying, let's not waste a good pandemic, right? I like to think that COVID had an impact on the landscape of travel. And even though it shifted a small amount of people, it's just enough to create enough of a change in the industry to change how people look at travel. I like COVID hasn't gone away. Like, it's still here.
Right.
I think I think there's inherent risk to travel. It hasn't changed, but people are more meaningful on why they. I think COVID taught people how important travel was to them when it got taken away, and it made people more purposeful on why they want to travel and where they want to travel. We're seeing people staying longer in destination, traveling less per year, but staying longer and going deeper in the destination. And that's music to our ears when people want to stay longer and really experience the culture and the community of that country. But what's more important is they're connected to the destination. I just think prior to COVID, the travel industry was the destination was irrelevant sometimes, where we were constantly selling amenities and thread counts on sheets and Broadway shows and go-kart racing or whatever, distractions, and people were traveling with the destination being secondary, which I think is super dangerous for us as a travel industry if people no longer connect to where they're going, right? Instead of that they can choose from 10 different culture types of food and eat French and sushi or whatever every day, and that becomes more important to them than experiencing another culture and learning from cultural immersion. And so I think that coming out of COVID, there's more and more people where travel actually got taken away from them, and they reprioritized it, and now it's more important to them, but they're more purposeful on why they want to travel. I think that's just I mean, it's not everybody. It's a very small amount, but it just takes a small amount, I think, to really change the landscape of the industry, and that's
Yeah.
that's what's reflecting in those figures.
And you're singing my song because, I've often felt very drawn to leveraging travel and what it does to us as humans in terms of erasing borders and using that as a power for good. I know that sounds like an absurd concept,
Well,
but in a way,
I mean,
travel advisors are those ambassadors for that type of movement, are they not?
100%. I
Yeah,
mean, that noble purpose of tourism and travel is often forgotten. And I've been on stage for 30 years saying, we're missing the greatest opportunity in travel to be a transformational industry.
yeah,
We can transform, and be transformative to communities. We can alleviate poverty. We can not just be a force for good, but we can, and we've been so focused on the customer and the customer experience. But with community tourism, everyone can benefit when you decide you want to go on holiday, right? And I think that's something that we forget in the travel industry. And travel agents become the ambassadors of that. And that's really what, when people want to pay for a service and they want to pay for their travel service,
yeah,
they want to pay for that advice, right? And I
yeah.
have this other saying that, travel can be the fastest path to peace. If more and more people got to know how other people lived in the world and got a better understanding of their kind of place in the universe, I think there'd be less violence and division in the world right now.
Well, yes, absolutely. And we're so much more divided than we ever were.
Mhm.
So, when you look at the news every morning, it is quite difficult, I find some days to keep going because you think, what's the point really? And then
Mhm.
you hear of these anecdotes of someone whose life was changed by who they met on a trip. And yeah, you know what? We're still really ultimately good people and we want the same thing. It's just that it seems to be coming out a little bit crooked lately.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, agreed. Agreed.
yeah, I don't know what else we can do really to help
Travel. That's what we can do.
travel.
Travel more. That's
Yeah,
I really believe that a lot of this division is bred out of ignorance, right, and fear.
yeah.
And so there's no better way to alleviate those fear than getting to know other people we share this planet with, and understand and when you understand how other people live, it gives you a greater appreciation of where you come from. That's the benefit of traveling, right? When you come home, there's nothing wrong with when you travel. You actually feel like, after 2 or 3 weeks, I'm ready to come home. Does that mean
Yeah.
I'm not a good traveler? It actually, no, it actually means you're the best traveler because you become an ambassador to go back home,
Yeah.
get a greater appreciation of where you come from and understand, give you more tolerance, give you more compassion, whatever it is, but it gives you a better understanding of your place in your community or your place in this world.
I agree.
Agreed.
I'm going to leave it on that note because you've inspired me, and I could, yeah, it's well said.
Thank you. Thank you, Nina.
Thank you
Great to
so
see you
much,
again.
Bruce, for your time.
I'm gonna come to your pink couch. I'm gonna make
Please
some.
come to the couch because then we're in
I'll see you
person,
next
and I
week.
find the dynamic changes a little bit, and we get to dive a little bit deeper in all these concepts.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.